the real question wasn't how I particularly start the session. It's how I show up for the session, how I arrive at the session and receive the session and the student or the client. From the very start, that notion of sitting with another in fundamental consciousness and listening from fundamental consciousness and expressing from fundamental consciousness without any kind of particular feedback or the usual kind of, upfront engagements, but of having someone really holding that space, that phenomena occurs, that what comes up, the depth of it, the experience of it, the spontaneity of it, the essential qualities that imbue it. I was in the forest and it was a rainforest and it was raining and it was so lush. It was so alive. And talk about living the essential qualities. It was just thick with the aliveness and the depth and the vitality of this forest, this space, this living space. And I went up to one of my favorite trees. It's a really, really old tree. And I just, kind of gracefully and gratefully entered the space of the tree and felt it and sensed it and perceived it. And it was feeling and sensing and perceiving me. And there was so much intimacy. There was so much love. There was so much responsiveness, back and forth with this tree. And entering into this space with the tree, it entered me into the whole forest. I could just feel the living quality of the whole forest. And I realized how that reflects and expresses what sessions are for me. And the quality of showing up in that kind of reverence, that kind of mystery, that kind of sacredness, that kind of attunement to the client, to myself, and to the environment. That's what really makes a difference in how a session begins, because then it can just spontaneously arise out of that contact, out of that space, out of that depth, out of that steadiness and wholeness. And so there can be any variety of ways to begin it, but they aren't necessarily significant on their own. What's significant is the felt, palpable sense that's present and empty, that the whole session then and the whole trajectory of the session can emerge from. So sometimes it might be simply a greeting. Sometimes it might be silence. Sometimes it might be just a waiting for the other to feel that spontaneous arising within themselves and offer what it is, what's present and alive in the moment. But that all emerges naturally as the session begins. But there is that shared contact, that shared space, and that shared field that lives, and it's just such a gift to, just like I feel in the old forest, it's just such a gift to be in the presence and of that field and another. That's the silence, that's the space and the spaciousness of not just coming on to the session and immediately, that tendency to lean into some kind of a more superficial level, but staying back and staying in that attunement, that magic can happen from that. That spontaneous response can happen from that. But often if it doesn't, then, and I notice that, or the client notices that, and people that I've been working with, we know that that's a go-to option, that if they need to settle, then we will spend the first bit of time, however long it takes or needs, in order to settle. And I do two things. One with the settling is that just settling with gravity, so like the grounding exercise, but I don't go through the whole exercise, but settling with gravity. But what I like even more is settling in the sense of allowing consciousness to know itself and to just close our eyes and let that recognition begin to open wherever in the body it begins. And then it's almost like popcorn in a way, that it just moves through the body and then with each other, the two of us within the space. And that's feels like an even more profound level of settling. And then we're settling into contact, not only with ourselves, but with each other. Sometimes I work with quite a few younger people that are in the Bay Area, and they work at tech jobs. And so they'll have been in so many meetings. And so the first thing that they'll need to do is stand up and just shake or just move around or whatever it is, just to let the energy move out of their body that allows them then to be more present and settled. So they're just, in meeting the person where he or she is, or they are, and with that attunement within myself, that I'm responsive to whatever the client needs. It's really deep reverence, and that's that consciousness knowing itself. Well, it really feels to me that for the most part, sessions have a trajectory, they have a coherence, they have a movement, and that a lot of the times it's getting out of the way of trying to superimpose something, but really letting it emerge organically. And the closing is often a significant part of that organic movement, that we both know at the end what we've witnessed, what we've experienced, what we've reflected back and forth in each other. And there's really a moment of, often a moment of reverence. There's a moment of still recognition of that opening, of that shift, of that deepening, whatever it may be. And sometimes I will just say aloud, can you feel the spaciousness? Can you feel that steadiness, all the way through the core, from top to bottom? And there's these wonderful nods of, This is usually with minimal words. And I think that, to me, is the best kind of recognition. That's the best kind of closure. It's that embodied, felt recognition and experience of what that shift, what that deepening, what that opening has been. And then it's like kind of just a very quiet, it's a quiet recognition, almost like a little nod or something of the body and being, where that is affirmed. But sometimes, I'll be more specific, and since I work with this whole body, whole being inquiry ongoing with the people that I meet with on a regular basis, we'll explore just a little bit of where that inquiry may go, following the session. Many times I will, at the end of the session, and will be in this silent recognition or depth, and I'll just quietly say, I'm just going to allow you to sit here if you wish. If you want to, we can talk a little bit, but then I'm just going to quietly leave the session, and I'll be with you next week. And that's one of the most beautiful, deep, real opportunities to just let it come even more alive, and let it settle, and let it be. It feels like a gift. It feels like a gift to them, and it feels like a gift to me. After I'm working with someone for a while, we just both come to know that the words are wonderful, but it's that deep experience and experiential opening that is what really registers. What I love the most is when I can stay back and the student or the client has the wisdom. It just comes up. And I've learned over the years about how to allow for that space and spaciousness for it to emerge. And it's like, it's not waiting, it's listening with my whole body. It's in that attunement and feeling into that pregnant pause. So something can be birthed, something can be open. And it's often, I'm often kind of surprised because I'm giving it more space than I think I would or I should. But almost every time it comes back with their next question, their next observation, their next felt sense that comes in. I can't give too much space. And everybody's different. As you know, everybody you meet with is different. And so sometimes it's their talking, their processing through that is what is absolutely necessary. And I'm there in loving presence, and I'm holding that. And I'm reflecting it back silently, non-verbally, but there's very little verbal injections on my part. But sometimes people are very kind of contracted in themselves. And so I need to sense what's going on with them to really read that, to feel that, to track that, and then offer the words that doesn't feel like they're capable of in that moment. And then that often gets them to begin to open. So it's always different. And again, it's that trajectory, it's that organic movement of really feeling that. And it's very seldom that I'm feeling like I'm micromanaging myself in a session, that the words just come when they come and they feel resonant. And if people are recording, I'll often go back and listen to the recordings as I have time. I mean, if I'm recording for them, and to feel into that, is that true? Does that really feel right? And sometimes I catch myself and I'm saying too much. And then the next session, I back off. And interestingly, they begin to open up more. And then, many times, the more I do it, I realize the resonance of what's emerging, and that there really is a felt sense to it. Trust yourself. Have faith. Rest in that faith. Find that faith. Find that wholeness. Find that unity. Find that coherence within yourself, and function from it, and trust it again and again and again. And that, yes, like listening to recordings is really helpful as you're honing that, and as you're, finding that flow and how to settle into it, how to move it, and where it is that you can find what it means to have mastery of allowing the space, the mastery of the space to be present. But at the same time, I would advise people to work with as many experienced people as they can. And for some longer periods of time to really get ideas about how people work, how this moves through and as people when they're working with others, and to continually put yourself in the position of the other chair and to be able to move back and forth really easily. And to hang out with as many people as you can, the people that you really respect and love and feel resonance with, just to hang out with people like that and to share, and to stay really, really, really curious, and to love what you do. Just don't ever limit the love. It's like being in the forest and feeling the love of those trees. And the love for this work is so healing for me, as well as it can be for those that I work with, because it's the healing ground. It's the healing ground. It's such a gift to have this opportunity